We'd like to welcome you to BeMoreNews.com, the news before the news, where we uncover the truth. My name is Donnie Glover. We're here with Marsha Jews, Mayor Colin Byrd, and Morocco Coleman from Atlanta. We also have joining us Attorney Bob DeShiel. An unprecedented day in America. Marsha Jews, you called for this.
I call it a coup. These white supremacists, including Donald Trump and his white supremacist family, called for a coup on the United States of America's government. And we need to have them storm the White House and arrest Donald Trump and all of his minions and all of those white supremacists that are sitting up there on Capitol Hill. If those have been, somebody's got reverberation going. Those people who were there today should be arrested. If they had been black people up on that building, going inside those buildings into Nancy Pelosi's office, they would have been killed on sight. And I'm tired of this foolishness with Donald Trump and people patting him on the back and saying, it's okay, Donald. He needs to be arrested. And the Department of Defense, the Secretary of the Defense, needs to be there and have him arrested immediately.
Attorney Bob, I know you're driving, but you want to chime in there?
I'm sorry, who you're talking to?
Attorney DeShiel, you want to chime in? I know you're driving.
No, let me get my bearings straight. Have someone else comment, and I'll come back at you in a second.
Okay, let's go to Robbie Scott. Robbie Scott in Atlanta.
Hey, Robbie.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm so upset. I just can't.
Yeah.
This is outrageous. It's outrageous. They're trying to take over the government. And what are we doing? They're walking around like if they're having just a regular old march. Nobody's doing anything. Nobody's arresting anybody. There's no National Guard that's being effective. There are no police officers being effective. What is that about? So they're just going to let them do that and let them just go casually walking through, climbing through windows, breaking down windows. What is that?
Robert?
Well, it shows us what it is all about. I mean, if it were us, if it were Latinos, if it were anybody of color, you know what the situation would be. You just said, where are the National Guards? Where the federal police? He told us he was going to do it.
Right.
He says if he didn't win, there would be hell in the streets.
Right.
And they listen, and they're sitting back and holding back. But this is that, what is it? The Proud Boys. Stand down. This is Proud Boys. He let you know that the Proud Boys are there. But I mean, it'll all blow over. I mean, I'm not even really upset. I'm really happy. I saw what. I just saw who saved us and what saved us, and I'm just so happy. It's like the future. We just saw this president bring out the largest number of people ever to vote for any president, white, black, including Obama. He brought them out to vote for him. Yep. And he just showed you that he can rally them all around that one white male supremacy agenda, and he did.
Yep.
And we speak of 2044, and that's the time when all of the minorities coming together outnumber white people in 2044. We just saw that happen right now. We actually saw that happen. And we didn't even realize where it was going to happen from. But I got a chance to see where it happened from, but we didn't expect it to happen the way it is. They are shaking in their boots. They had no idea that 2044 was on them right now, and it was all done inside of that new electorate, the young kids. Those young kids showed him that you can have 70% of white Republicans come out and vote. People that hadn't voted for years, that never voted. He had the most white people ever show up to vote for him. Just went on. But it didn't amount up to all these young kids joining this electorate. These new kids. What we just saw in Atlanta, I'm smiling, I'm laughing because we had more people that were available in the electorate to vote for this runoff with the Senate than actually voted for the president. After the president lost, or after Biden won, kids flooded to the electorate and joined just to make sure that Warnock and Ossoff won. They never voted in their 30s. Been here for the longest.
Well, let's hear from that group. Mayor Colin Byrd, Mayor of Greenbelt. Just earlier today, we were talking with you, and we were addressing the institutional racism in Maryland, including the University of Maryland, Byrd Stadium, formerly Byrd Stadium. We were talking about the institutional racism in the state politics of the state of Maryland. And just minutes from where you are, there is a Capitol, the U.S. Capitol, under siege.
Literally.
We were just talking about this morning.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you again for having me on. And unfortunately, we are back on under really extraordinary circumstances, unprecedented circumstances as far as what's been going on today. You know, but I also, as much as I agree with everybody, what everybody has said before about what should happen from here in terms of people being held accountable and all of the ironies of the fact that they seem to be treating this very differently, that they would treat situations involving a totally different demographic group of people or even political group of people. We saw, for example, literally during the unrest following Floyd in 2020, we saw that in that exact same city, DC, in that exact same district, you had, Trump using overwhelming force and bringing to bear the might of the military to use overwhelming force to subdue and to suppress the freedom of speech of individuals who, by and large, were peacefully petitioning government for redress of grievances around racial injustice, around police brutality, and around the criminal justice system and the reforms that need to take place therein and thereabout. Now, let me also say this. As much as I'm concerned about what's happening right now, I want us to step back and to reflect once again on the fact that this is a simple problem. It is not necessarily, we need to get at the root of the problem. In mental institutions, I believe, I remember hearing that in mental institutions, one of the ways that they determine whether somebody has arrived at a certain level of mental fitness is that they'll lock the individual in a janitor's closet, leave the water running in the sink, and have them mop up the floor. Now, if they don't, and there's a stopper right there in the sink. Now, if they don't understand that the root of the problem is the stopper, and they're still mopping the floor without having dealt with the stopper minutes, hours later, then they know that person is not all the way up to snuff in the head, right? And so I'll say all that to say that by the same token, we need to deal with the stoppers in American politics and in American society, the roots of the problem. Right now, what we're seeing is the manifestation of some of America's original sin, which is slavery. And we're also seeing the manifestation of the catastrophic consequences of the fateful decision that was made by the founding fathers, or the so-called founding fathers of these United States of America, to create an electoral college system by which this type of thing is possible, to try to even have a Congress that can even be in a position to decide an election. And so from my standpoint, if we did not have that scenario, this election and all of the unrest that you're seeing today would have been somewhat more easy to prevent, if not necessarily outright stop.
So Donnie, I'm ready when you are.
About the fact that I support abolishing the Electoral College because it undermines our democracy and it emboldens the individuals that we're seeing today. I'm not going to name call, but I'll just say this: whatever happened to law and order? We hear that from a third party and from a
It's a law and order party.
Donnie, what we're seeing here, Frank, and I love my younger brother, but this frankly has nothing to do with the Electoral College. This is a reenactment of their version of the Civil War. Okay, these folks think they are patriots. They think they are heroes, and it starts. Let me finish. And it starts from the problem that we never called them what they really were after the Civil War, which is traitors.
Right. They
committed treason.
And that's
the reason the statutes ought to come down, not because they're offensive to black folk, not because they're offensive to Indians, but because they're traitors. They should never have been pardoned in the first place. Okay? These people are reenacting the Civil War. That's what Donald Trump wanted to happen.
And that's what he did. And he needs to be arrested as a traitor as well.
Exactly.
All he needs to do.
On that note, let's hear from a soldier. Mr. Coleman, what's your title? Sergeant? Forgive me.
Yeah, I was a sergeant in the military during Vietnam.
Sergeant Morocco Coleman, welcome back to the show.
Well, thank you.
And we should add that you're in the wonderful state of Georgia.
Yes, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, born and raised here. I have to echo the sentiments of Mr. Robert DeShield. I saw a couple of days ago some of these future protesters were saying, yeah, if it goes down a certain way, we're going to attack and it'll be a civil war.
Right.
And that's the mindset. Now, I understand this morning, Trump spoke to these folk down the road there and told them to go and march on the Capitol, and he insinuated that he was going to meet them there, or he was going to be there with them. And what he has done is incited. And Robert Scott said, also, you got the civil war aspect of it. Then on the other side of the coin, you've got the white man really being intercoursed out of existence by 2044. And so they're dealing with that fear. When you look back on Bull Connors and all those good old boys down in Mississippi and Alabama back in the day, and they would say, remember the white ranch, keep it pure. That's what they were talking about. They knew that they were becoming extinct because of low sperm count, because of integration, interracial marriages and relationships, children being mixed. So they knew this was coming. And this is a microcosm into a bigger cosm. And not just what you're seeing about Trump, but it's the manifestation of all of that coming together and then realizing that in a minute, they have no power and no win.
So, Mr. Morocco, what I think is interesting as a military personnel and all the training that you had, would this be considered a coup, and shouldn't the military, the Department of Defense, be up on Capitol Hill since that is government property? And our legislators are up there and their lives are in danger?
As you stated at the beginning when you said a coup d'etat.
Right.
That's exactly what it is.
Right.
It's masquerading as something else. But it's white folk against white folk. It's like back in the Civil War.
Exactly. And it had been, if those streets had been filled with black people, they'd all be dead right about now.
Right.
And I want them all arrested. I want Donald Trump arrested. I want him in prison today.
You it brings up treason and sedition.
And
that was, and you don't even have to go that far. I remember a small town called Cambridge.
Wait a minute, Bob. What's the last word you said, Morocco?
Sedition.
Sedition. What is sedition? I don't know.
Sedition is when you forcefully and use the powers that you have to overthrow the government back to the coup d'etat.
Okay.
And that's what we're looking at. And from a military standpoint, anytime you got it, whether black or white, you know that you're going to have a little power play, or you're going to have some issues, or somebody's going to come out of the woodwork. You're going to need more than the Capitol Hill police.
Right, right.
The DC Police Department is showing you that they're not prepared for it.
They're not ready for that because that's federal property. So it needs to be federal agencies on their military, not the police department.
But in order to bring out the federal government in that perspective, to bring out the 82nd Airborne,
right,
or the 101st, it has to come through the president.
Oh, wait a second. Now we're not talking. First of all, it's already the federal government, because there's U.S. police and the various government police there. This is what you've got here. You can't call out a general group of people, but the problem is half of those people in the U.S. police are Trump supporters too.
Right.
Okay. So if we're gonna put this down, I remember Waco. And I remember the standoff in Oregon, and I remember the standoff. They have never responded to white terrorists the way that they do other folks. So now we gotta be smart. We gotta get an elite team of folk to do this. It can't be anybody and everybody, because So you know,
the Virginia governor has said that he is sending out the Virginia National Guard to DC.
Maryland should be sending them too.
Hogan has already agreed to do that. I think he's already sending them. He already announced earlier he was, because Muriel Bowser asked Hogan and the governor of Virginia to send in the National Guard.
Right.
Right.
But you got to remember now, when they send out the National Guard, those are the guys that go to summer camp 2 weeks, and they go up to Maryland to the academy once a month. Okay, and then they go back to their regular jobs and whatever else. When you start putting down an insurrection like this, that's when you call out the 82nd, 101st, and actual military units.
No.
The president is not stepping to that point.
It's a coup.
Well, it's not a coup yet, because it's not successful. It's an attempted coup. I agree.
It's attempted, and the fact that they knocked out windows and actually stormed the Congress. That's something right there.
I stopped short of calling for a military intervention. The military, it's not. The problem is we can't call in a group of people who are going to shoot people indiscriminately.
Well,
and that's the problem. That's the problem. That's the problem with the military.
Yeah, that's what they not see. Trump called out the military and to attack Black Lives Matters and others that were out there in those streets, for him to walk across streets with a Bible.
Yep.
So but they didn't shoot anybody. Later on that night, they had the people in the vans with the black suits taking people to places where you've never seen them again. But the folks who were visible that day didn't shoot anybody as they walked across Lafayette Park.
Well,
they sprayed them with tear gas and all that kind of crap.
There's already been shot inside the Capitol. Somebody's supposed to have already been shot.
So yeah, it's a woman that was shot. She's critically ill. She probably won't make it. Yeah, they can get them out of there, and they need to get them out. But the folks that we send in to get them out have got to be the right people, and we've got to do it. We've got to do it in the right. I just don't think bringing in soldiers and Navy SEALs, and I don't think we need all. I don't think we need all that. Remember now, most of these folks that are doing this, they really ain't got no heart.
Okay.
They're just acting with they overcome by the herd syndrome.
That's not true.
You got a lot of them
in that position.
Hold up, I got
a lot of them.
I got a question for the panel. What are these people? Are they insurrectionists? Are they protesters? Are they rioters? What are they?
They're domestic terrorists is what they are.
For Donald Trump.
Domestic terrorists who have stepped into the United States Capitol to overthrow the United States government. So that is back to a coup d'etat.
It is.
And it's not an attempt. It is an act which has taken place.
This is not a joke. This is real stuff. They're trying. They are in there
And when you
knocking
say-
down
and when you
windows
say-
and doors.
When you say you don't need to bring in all of
You need to bring in everybody.
here and everything, you have never had this type of attack on the United States
States government. It's
like this before.
outrageous.
So you don't have a blueprint. You can't half step with it, because see, one of the things you're not bringing up, when you get a group of people like this, like you talk about the herd mentality and they following the crowd, but that is what true insurrection is.
Right.
Terrorists look for,
Right.
to bend in and
Right.
to start stepping into that capital with those
Right.
herd mentality folks.
That's
don't
right.
want
But they
to
got leaders in there.
and
They got
start
leaders.
putting bombs and everything else up in that capital, in those seats and other places.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This. Go ahead, Robert.
Come on, Robert.
There's like two chess players. You got a guy back there by the name of Putin who is laughing his ass off,
No question.
sitting back, pushing buttons, every switch he needs, every slide or lever he needs to pull with Trump, he has it. He loves it. He smiles. He got Trump out there working for him. Now they have a coup d'etat, something that doesn't even go on in this country. Y'all talking about insurrections and shit that we don't even talk about in this country. But he brought that here. How did we bring that here? Well, when I do my homework, I just look back. If you look back, there was something that we call, when we were growing up, the USSR, Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, the Soviet Union. If you check to see where Trump's two wives are from, they were from the Soviet Union.
Come on, brother.
Yep.
He only deals with that type of thing. He made one really good investment. That was his investment after no banks would deal with him. His investment in the Miss Universe pageant.
Yes.
He owned half of it
Yep.
with NBC, the network.
Yep.
NBC, the network,
Bring it.
after having done their homework on Trump, decided we don't want to play this game anymore. Let's cut a deal so that Trump can own it all. And they gave it to him. They gave it to him. In 2012, I think it's 2012, he went to Moscow because Moscow was where that pageant was happening. And at that pageant, that's where people talk about him with the young girls and how he goes and walks back when they are topless and bottomless. And he talked about that and all that stuff. Well, when he was there, you don't leave the United States or Western Europe and go to the Soviet Union or Russia without intelligence following you. This time it happened. He did have intelligence following him, but it wasn't U.S. intelligence.
Right.
It was British intelligence. And there was a guy that was embedded in Moscow at the time who communicated back and said, you are not going to believe who in the hell is here right now. He's talking to Putin's people. He's partying. They're putting him through the paces. He's talking to financial people. He talked with someone about one day becoming the president. This is right after he sat in that audience when Obama made those jokes about him. He talked to them about becoming president, but he more so than anything, he talked to them about, I need financing to do my real estate deals.
All those
They had to figure out a way to get that done. Well, we have a way to get that done. We have influence on a bank that will deal with you. You were working with them. We know your rep. We know your New York rep. Her name is XYZ. After you get back from here, XYZ is going to call you. And all of a sudden, you're going to have financing for your deals. And it's all going to come through Deutsche Bank.
There you go.
So he gets back. They go through all of this, and a whole lot of things happen while they're there. These are things that are in that dossier. This guy's name is not Richard, but I forget his first name, but his last name is Steele.
Yeah, you're talking about the British spy, but let me interject one thing. The connection between Trump and the Deutsche Bank was through Jared Kushner. It wasn't directly through Kushner.
Hold on. Well, let me finish what I'm saying, and then I'll welcome you to come and clean me up.
All right. Okay. Go ahead.
Let me finish what I'm saying. So he gets back over to the United States, but there's some things that happen during that, and it's all written in that dossier. The guys, they ask him, who is the person? He says, I can't tell you who the person is, because if I tell you who the person is, it's going to get out and I'm going to blow my cover. But I tell you this, what they have on him is they have a video of him with Russian prostitutes in a very compromising situation. And if this video gets out, it's worse than what his wife would do to him, but in a very compromising situation. That's what's in that Steele dossier, the one that he tries to say the fake dossier.
Yeah.
All right, so he comes back to the United States. But within the first quarter of him being back into the United States, he gets a call and he gets coverage for bank loans. One of the bank loans came for 666 Park Avenue. That was the one that was for the son-in-law Kushner. That's the one that got Kushner out of trouble with the 666 Park Avenue deal.
And that's the building.
And that's one of the buildings.
Yeah.
That's one of the buildings. He actually has $1.5 billion in loans from Deutsche Bank. What's in the Mueller investigation is that he's seen the paperwork, because they went to Deutsche Bank, put pressure on Deutsche Bank, and instead of covering for him, Deutsche Bank gave up all the information. And what you'll see when you see the unredacted version is that those loans are underwritten by 2 Russian oligarchs, those Deutsche Bank loans. One thing that we know, you can't be a president for the United States of America. You can't run for president and be in debt to a foreign national.
Unless
That's
you're Donald
against the
Trump.
Constitution.
Well, it's not. It's much more than the Deutsche Bank. I mean, it's the Chinese, it's the Saudis who own almost all of the condos in Trump Tower.
I didn't get that's a whole other thing. The Chinese stuff that just came due on them. The Chinese loans just came due on them. We're just talking Deutsche Bank right now.
And how about the Saudi?
He's in bad trouble.
Saudi Arabia owns the largest oil production facility in the United States, and they also own 50% of the condos in Trump Tower. And it was Jared Kushner. There's a player in this who we haven't mentioned. Israel wrote the software that the Russians used to compromise the 2016 election. All of this was arranged through Jared Kushner. The two contacts that Trump got at the Deutsche Bank, the private equity division, which is a division all funded by Russian oligarchs, Putin people, that connection was made by Jared Kushner through Israel. This story is much bigger than what we think. But anyway, getting back to the people.
Well, yeah, we know the man is in massive trouble, and Kushner may be in worse trouble than he's in.
Yeah.
And New York government, everybody, there are at least 3 different entities out in New York that are waiting.
He's
going to jail.
Mayor Bird, I see you want to comment.
Yeah, so it's interesting. As I'm listening to the conversation, we started the conversation talking about what's happening today, and we've gotten into some other topics that are historical. And for a moment, I was like, "How did we get to this point?" But as I thought more about it, as I listened to the conversation, again, in my mind, a lot of this stuff is interconnected, right? And it all comes back to the root problem of the fact that this president and his supporters, they hate democracy. They despise democracy.
That's right. They want a republic.
They despise justice. And so this what you're seeing today, whether we want to talk about the Electoral College or whatever else, everything kind of amounts to these varied and consistent, persistent attacks on democracy, whether it's like I said, the Electoral College, which I think was an original mistake by the founding fathers, or what they did in the past, what they did in terms of soliciting the help of Russia and Ukraine to interfere in America's democracy, what they did to try to stop people from getting mail-in ballots by hamstringing and crippling the United States Postal Service. You guys mentioned other foreign entanglements that are at play, whether it's the Chinese or the Saudis or Israel. All of these things are a fundamental threats to our democracy that our president, our current occupant of the Oval Office, not only is engaged in, but that he embraces and emboldens orders to engage in a way that is really unprecedented. The call to Georgia's Secretary of State saying, "I hope you can help us overturn the election." All of this leads to this moment where he has look. This is why leadership matters, because a good leader, right, can fold, can say, you know what, I lost, right? You know what I'm saying? You can shake hands at the end of the game and say, look, I lost, and we live to fight another day. Hey, President, you can come back in 2024, and if people don't like Biden and Harris, maybe you get elected. But instead of going that route, the president is trying to say, look, we didn't lose, even though we all looking at the scoreboard and saying, look, you got beat. You got beat. You got beaten the popular vote, and you got beaten the Electoral College vote. It's not even a question. And yet we want to carry this thing way past the buzzer and act like somebody made a bad call. Nobody made a bad call. You got outvoted, and the people have spoken, both from the swing state standpoint and from the popular vote standpoint. You know, in 2016, the people spoke in a very divided voice, right? You got the Electoral College victory, Mr. President, but the people, in terms of the popular vote, they didn't want you. And so they've always had this resistance to the reality of the outcome of an election. And if we don't do something about these threats to democracy, right? They stripped away at the Voting Rights Act of 1965 through the U.S. Supreme Court. Remember that? They gutted that in recent years, much to the chagrin of our champion, John Lewis. What they did with the USPS, what they are doing to this day in terms of disenfranchising individuals who have felonies, disenfranchising people who are incarcerated, who never should have been incarcerated in the first place. And frankly, even disenfranchising people who immigrated to this country, who frankly, if we want to be honest, America has no moral rights to tell somebody that they have no business being classified as an American, when you know that the way that this land was obtained was through unjust and brutal means. How can America tell undocumented brown brothers or our black brothers and sisters who are from Africa or Haiti or the Caribbean, how can America look at these individuals with a straight face and say, we deserve to be here more than you deserve to be here? After we know, if we know our history, we know how this land was acquired. It was acquired unjustly at the expense of Native Americans.
And the death
and it was kept and sustained and grown unjustly on the backs of black slaves. We know that. And so for folks that have benefited from that for decades, centuries, to turn around and say they're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, to say that with a straight face, knowing the history of this country and who really was the rapist,
is laughable.
Who really was the criminals, who really was the brutalizers. What? Now again, I'm not here to hang all of the injustices of America's past on current individuals that are vestiges or who benefited from that. But we have to, in 2020, acknowledge that that is part of our history, and we have to be willing to do what is necessary from a public policy standpoint to reconcile with that history and to take action to address that history. And that's why we need, for example, reparations. That's why we need, for example, people to understand and to finally understand we have to do away completely with not only symbols of the Confederacy, but also the Confederate-minded thinking that leads to what you see today. The Confederate-minded thinking that leads to what you see today. The notion that we were wrong, that these individuals had, that they were wrong simply because people didn't vote the way that they wanted to vote. I mean, look, it's getting so bad that now we're starting to like Mitt Romney. This man said 47% of America was takers, and that they were, he had negative things to say about 47% of America. And now we like Mitt Romney, because guess what? Mitt Romney won't even vote to overturn the election. He's saying, nah, y'all are going way too far. That's where we are in just less than a decade. 2012, 8 years ago, 9 years ago, we thought this man was bad news. And in the country, that party has moved so far out of the mainstream.
Extreme.
I got a comment. Excuse me. Just a few years ago, you couldn't tell a black entertainer, athlete, some politicians, that Mr. Trump wasn't the coolest guy in the world, and the guy to hang out with, and the guy to take pictures with. You got guys with the money of Puffy right now that can spend the money to take his pictures with this guy off of Google. But all of them kicked it with him. All of them, oh yeah, loved it. You can Google anybody. And as evil as he is, there was one time he was the guy to hang out with. If you had black opulence, or you had some type of success in life, you name it, the rappers, R&B, Oprah, Muhammad Ali, Al Sharpton, all of them.
It's because
with Donald Trump.
It's because, unfortunately, too many of us, both before and after the ascension of Donald Trump to the Oval Office, have misaligned priorities of values. We believe, not we, but there are too many of us who make money God instead of God God.
Say it again.
Many of us who put money over people. That's in the entertainment space, in the sports space, in all kinds of spaces.
And the religious space, because you got the preachers up there with him too.
And in a religious space, but I point this out because you mentioned entertainers, and you mentioned rappers, and you mentioned these folks that put him up on a pedestal. And I still say that, as I was saying earlier, it comes down to leaders and what they focus on, and it also comes down to what America has taught these individuals about what good is and what great is. America has always put money before people, and has always put money before God. And so if we have been in this country for such years under that, and
one thing Trump so effective is that Trump is the ultimate. When you talk about he is the ultimate con game grifter, con man, and as the information was being laid out that looked like ancient history about this guy and how we got here and everything, that information is very important, because as you go into battle against the things that he has set up and that we're stuck with now, you got to know what the enemy is. Now, back to Mr. Scott, like you were saying about the women and the setup in Russia and everything, another piece of that puzzle that I heard, now I don't know any validity to it, but it makes a lot of sense when I looked into it. I've heard that Trump was introduced to his present wife by Putin, and that well, look at where she's from, and look at that part of the world, and that she is very possibly his handler. Now, that sounds way out in left field, but also let's go back and look at who Putin is. Putin started out in the KGB, cutting his teeth on being able to turn individuals. He could spot that weakness, step to you, and run his game and suck you in, and now have you part of his team, and you don't even know that you're in there. So all of these little bits and pieces all come together to one point. One man has stepped forward, almost like the guy back in World War II named Hitler, and it's looking at the ultimate power and control. And history repeats itself.
Donald Trump is somebody who is very much misleading in many of his statements, and he has misled many Americans, including many of those that we see on the steps of the U.S. Capitol and raiding the U.S. Capitol today to believe that somehow this wealthy billionaire, or I don't know if he's a billionaire, you know, some folks say he got so much debt that maybe that's not accurate. But point is this individual who certainly has resources that he can move around, whether it's his own or whether it's the banks.
He has access. He has access to whatever he wants when he wants it, and how he's going to get it until they put his behind in jail when he looks like he might not think about going to Florida.
Mr. Brown, you get a comment?
Can you hear me?
We can actually hear every time your headphone brushes your collar.
All right, hold on. All right, hold on. Let me get rid of this. All right. Sorry.
So you've been listening in. Any thoughts?
You know, it's everything that everybody has said is more true than not. But you know, the real mystery here is, the real question is, it's not so much Trump, because anybody who wanted to know what Trump was, they didn't have to look very hard to find out. But look at these other assholes that call themselves elected officials, Republicans for the most part, who have, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, who have aided and abetted this insurrection. Right. And the insurrection didn't start today. The insurrection started in 2016. And look at them. But look at, what is it about being a United States congressperson or a United States senator or or a mayor or general or governor? What is it that's so important that you would sell your soul for it?
Power.
What is it about the power of the office that's so compelling that
$170,000 a year?
It's got to be more than that. I mean, it's got to be more. It's got to be more to it than just. I hope. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope it's more than the salary of. Maybe it's the notion. Maybe it's the prestige. I don't know what it is. But you got a whole bunch of folk walking around with their heads up this man's behind.
It's a misalignment.
Some of them will never see the light of day again because their eyes have been permanently sealed by his excrement.
It's a misalignment of their priorities and their values, and it's a lack of principle. It's a lack of principle, and it's unbridled ambition that is untethered to any understanding or appreciation of the Constitution or democracy. And so you find U.S. senators who want to be president one day, like Ted Cruz, jumping out there up and down because they know that in a Republican primary, in the party of Trump, this type of behavior is celebrated and in fact demanded. I mean, the best example of all of this, I think, is right here in our own state with the governor. You know, our governor is somebody, and I don't have anything really to say about him so much on this because I think he's right on this issue. But one of the biggest challenges that he'll face as they talk about him running for president of these United States of America is that type of Republican, that's not who they want in the primaries. They want they want somebody that's just off the chain. You saw what they did to Jeb Bush, and I don't like Jeb Bush. But you know, he was way different than Donald Trump in that campaign. You saw what they did to Marco Rubio. Anybody that's anywhere near the middle is done in that party. In that party, all they want to know is, do you agree with the foolish wisdom, the foolish advice not to wear a mask? That right there wins you points in the party. We don't wear masks. Right, that is a badge of honor. We don't wear masks. We don't accept the results of a presidential election. We don't believe in police brutality. Jacob Blake, that didn't happen. That's what wins you points.
They didn't wear any mask up on Capitol Hill either.
And because of that, and because people are more ambitious than they are principled and committed to a higher calling, they'll go along with all of it. In fact, not only will they go along, they'll say, I'm the strongest on that. I'm the strongest opponent of police reform. I'm the strongest opponent of democracy. I'm the strongest opponent of addressing the coronavirus pandemic. That's what they compete on now. They compete on this now. And so
man, can I add to what you, Ms. Bird? Let me add to what you were saying. They do compete on that. They do want to say that they are the most. This woman, Leffler is the way they pronounce it. Okay. I mean, the way it's supposedly pronounced. She's known as the most conservative senator in the country. That's what she ran on, and that's what they always said about her. Yeah. She is way more conservative, crazy conservative, Trump conservative than anyone. She was never elected, though. Exactly. She got appointed because the guy in front of her wound up getting sick, and she was Johnny on the spot, and she got put in that situation. Plus, she's a multimillionaire. She owns the NBA, the WNBA team here, the Atlanta Dream. And the hell she caught from them, man, they're secretly talking to the Williams sisters about coming up and buying that team from her. Them players don't want her as the owner because they're more than the NBA. They speak out the WNBA. They say more than the NBA. They are more about that shit than the NBA. And for her to be an owner of that team, that pissed those girls off. So they got even more and more and more and more. I hope she loses her franchise. But she is the person who is supposedly, more than any white man, more than McConnell, she's the most conservative, and she lost her ass in that election.
And I'm so proud of people of Atlanta.
What'd you say?
Of seeing that and recognizing she and Perdue both.
Yes.
And I think part of what took them down was their advertisements and the commercials that they ran. I mean, it got so far in left field, man, with Ossoff.
It got crazy.
He was involved with China, and Chinese were doing this and that. They were even some of the advertisements were so far in left field that they overshot the runway. To most people were saying, "What the heck are they talking about?" You know,
right?
And they read in between the lines. But the people of Georgia
saw it.
This state blue for the presidency and brought in Biden and Kamala Harris. And I thought it was going to be rather rough here going for these senatorial seats. But when I went to vote on the second day, early voting, one of the ladies there that was helping me, she said, I said, well, how is it looking today? She says, well, it's really great. She says, we've had over 800 people today, and it was 800 yesterday. And then it was just a general feeling of my comrades and people in general that I was coming in contact with. And it was like there was a movement afoot, and there was a paradigm shift. I guess the best way to put it is a paradigm shift. And it was such a shift that many of the people up there on Capitol Hill trying to rush that building, and many of the good old boys and folk around here in Georgia walk around scratching their heads like, what happened? But a lot of this, man, I truly believe with the virus, the lockdown, the introspective things that were taking place, I truly believe that a lot of this has to do with a spiritual something here that has moved across this nation.
So let me just interject and point the ball, Sergeant Coleman, Robert Scott. How does it feel there in the state of Georgia, having just seen what we saw last night? Warnock, Ossoff, 2 victories. How do you feel? What's the sentiment?
And before you answer, add this to the equation: Stacey Abrams and her participation within all of that.
That's where I was about to go.
Yeah,
I'm gonna start, and I'm gonna start with Stacey. We don't feel like we really got anywhere. We took 2 steps backwards to take 3 steps forward and make one You know, just one little step. Stacey was robbed.
Yes.
She had Kemp beat. And he went out and he closed precincts. And he used the excuse of in the past they've had poor turnout. And he closed precincts, white and black. Because in South Georgia, they vote along with black people, more so than North Georgia. The racists, most racists, are in North Georgia, in all honesty. Many of the South Georgia whites are poor. There are rich whites in South Georgia. They own they're the landowners. There ain't that many of them. But I'm so proud of them because we have taken 2 steps backwards. There was a guy who should have been there before Ossoff. And his name is Jason Carter. That's Jimmy Carter's son.
Okay.
And he backed out of the scene. He the baddest one out there.
Why?
Because of his kids. He needed to let his kids get a certain age because he wanted to spend this time with his kids. But he wanted to see for a moment or two. And he's just like Ossoff, those white kids that grew up during the hip hop nation. They know Killer Mike and know, I mean, what got us where we are now are young people.
Yeah.
They stepped up and joined the electorate to support Ossoff. His wife is an OBGYN in the area. Regular people, straight regular people. And they touched the hearts of whites and blacks. To become a senator, you have to take half of the state.
Oh, that's huge.
It's 2 positions.
That's huge.
That's why I give Kamala so much respect. She took half of California.
Right. That's huge.
We're 13.4% of the population as of December of this year, which is up actually. We're 13.4% of the population, probably because of the last census too. But we were 30% of the electorate, black people. So these people that you have, friends that I have on Facebook that don't vote, black people that don't vote because of the electoral college and all these other reasons for not voting. It was just shown to them what getting your ass up and voting will do en masse.
That's right.
Go ahead.
And I was just also going to say that there were 2 other, and since you're there, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but 2 of my observations as well is that the stimulus talks in particular, I think, animated a number of people who may have historically been disaffected or disinterested in electoral politics from the standpoint of voting. I mean, you had in probably the most plainest ways in American history, a U.S. Senate election that toward the end was centered around the prospect of having a majority whereby the leader would literally block $2,000 stimulus checks, or having a majority whereby the leader would not only allow that, but actually support that.
Right. Creative.
Mitch McConnell doing that 2000, blocking that bill on the eve of this, pissed off the whole nation. And it pissed off probably a good portion of Georgia to the point of even Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue reluctantly, after having opposed stimulus checks for months, had to capitulate, but it was too late. Had to capitulate, it was too late. That's number one. Number 2.
That didn't hurt. But to do what they just did, you had to have new people join the electorate.
I understand,
so it couldn't have been off of a knee-jerk reaction off of this happening or that happening. This was actually planned. And as Mr. Coleman will tell you, if you saw the marketing in this state, they put more money into this Senate run than I saw of Trump at all. Right. The presidential thing, we didn't see no presidential stuff. We've been seeing this senatorial thing for months and big money put into it to the point where it educated people that were educatable. We were seeing those kind of advertisements.
Every day I was getting at least 7 different documents about voting and little postcards from throughout the state and whatever else. But now another piece of this puzzle here. Stacey Abrams.
I had another point, by the way. Go ahead.
Okay, Stacey Abrams was running against Kemp, who was Secretary of State. Stacey Abrams built the machine, and she got 70,000 new people registered to vote.
It's fabulous.
The guy she's running against would not step down as Secretary of State. He held up the 70,000 new votes and said, well, we've got to make sure that they're not ex-offenders. We got to make sure that they're truly eligible to vote. They're residents of Georgia, et cetera, et cetera. But it's going to take a minute for us to do this. He was shamming and stalling, and Stacey Abrams was defeated by 30,000 votes, 33,000 votes. 70,000 never even got the opportunity because the Secretary of State, who was the now incoming governor, was the one that was going to knock that out. Now, also, Donnie has had me on this show along with a friend of mine that's on the Congressional Black Caucus with me in D.C., Clarence Tiger Davis, used to be a representative for Maryland. And Tiger is from South Georgia. And Tiger got in touch with all of his folk down home, and all of his folk down home, they were relatives. He contacted me and a brother, Reverend Christopher Johnson in Augusta, Georgia, who's been in politics for a number of years. He's got like 19 congressional districts down there. He made us co-chairman, and now we put out a call throughout the whole state of Georgia for all the veterans that we could touch. And all of those veterans reached out to family, friends, and everybody that they could get. And Stacey Abrams came on board with us, spoke with us for about 20 minutes. She understood what we were doing. Reverend Johnson was so powerful in what he was doing down in South Georgia that he was able to get Lyft Transportation Company to provide transportation throughout the whole state of Georgia for anybody that could not get to the polls. Just contact one of us and we'll get you there.
Right.
And so we're going to keep that cadre going and take it further into politics and other community kind of involvements, along with Stacey Abrams and this machine that she has built. And so you ask how we feel down here. I'm excited. I was a little worried at first because it was shaky, and I turned away from it late last night. At 3 o'clock this morning, I turned it back on. It was looking better. I'm excited now. I am so pleased with my people in the state of Georgia, throughout the whole state. And now we can take it to the next level.
And this is
two senators.
This is a very historic day on a good note for the state of Georgia and the country from the blue perspective. But on the other hand, right now, the U.S. Capitol is under siege. And so moving forward, Mayor Byrd, you'd like to be a congressman representing the 5th Congressional District here in Maryland. You could have very well, that's where you will be working.
Can you give us your second point, though, Mayor?
So my second point, I guess it's a couple now, but my second point was, and I appreciate that question. I was just going to say that in addition to what I said about the stimulus, and I'm very grateful to you guys being on the call to shed some light on all of the sort of get out the vote efforts that have been ongoing and the strategic communications that have been employed or deployed by all of the people with interest in making sure that Georgia ultimately went the way that it went, not only in the presidential election and the U.S. Senate election, most notably, as you guys mentioned, Stacey Abrams, who learned quite a bit from her own experience a few years ago when she ran for governor and has been a leader on voting rights even before then, but especially since then across the country. And you guys talked about not only the mail that you guys were getting, but the word of mouth and the connections with the veterans and the fact that they made way in terms of transportation to make sure folks could get to the polls. All of that is great. But I also want to tie it in with what I'm doing, which is one of the things that I saw, and you guys probably could speak to this, is that there was, I think more so than any U.S. Senate race that I've ever seen that's not a Maryland Senate race, so like in another state, there was a great deal of awareness that was raised about the problems with Kelly Loeffler and the problems with David Perdue. I thought it was very well articulated to the country, so folks could be willing to help. and it was very well articulated to Georgians, the problems with having them, with the way that they tried to make money off of various problems that happened in the pandemic, the way that they was blocking stimulus stuff, and also the way that they were deploying the most unseemly campaign tactics, specifically against Reverend Raphael Warnock, by specifically trying to hang the Reverend Wright speech over his head, right? The Reverend Jeremiah Wright speech, which I talked about earlier. And I believe, frankly, that it actually backfired and actually helped to mobilize African Americans, particularly those people of faith who looked at that sermon in a broader context and understood that he was telling the truth about America. One, and number two, that how dare you do that? How dare you use that? There's a lot of things you could say about a candidate, but how dare you go at that as the reason not to vote for somebody?
There are no boundaries.
Mr. Coleman will tell you they had a commercial come out where they had Kelly Loeffler speaking in his church. They're like, well, if she didn't like him, she's up there speaking in his church.
That's what I'm
speaking
saying.
in Ebenezer. It's like, hold on. What can you say about the guy who's the pastor of Martin Luther King Sr. and Jr.'s old church?
And John Lewis' church, right?
And all the work that he does out of this church, all the work that this church does in this state. How can you even say that? That's a little church by comparison of churches.
But let me say this about Georgia, because we're talking about Georgia and that's the news of the day. But remember, I always try to step back and I look at things as a bird's eye view, right? Colin Bird. I look at things from a bird's eye view. So we're looking at Georgia, and Georgia is one of the 50 states on this map. And what Georgia is telling me and what Georgia is showing us, you got to remember, just some years ago, Georgia was looked at as red until we was all dead, right? And so thinking of Georgia as a swing state was not something that was even in the cards for a lot of people in their minds just a few years ago. Stacey Abrams helped give us a glimpse that that window is cracked. It's now wide open, but it's cracked.
And she rolled up her sleeves.
She rolled up her sleeves, and she cracked that window wide open. Let me tell you, we talk about the presidents. Now, the electoral college issue cuts both ways. This winner take all swing state system, it cuts both ways. It can hurt you, right? Like it did in 2016 and what it did in 2000, where you got Florida and the hanging Chad, and you got these swing states that go in the way that we don't want. Same thing in 2016 when it went for North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and even though he didn't have a popular vote, he still ascended to the presidency. But it cuts both ways. Now, what do I mean? We are on the verge, if we can take what just happened in Georgia,
exactly,
we are on the verge of ending the chances of Republicans ever being able to get the presidency ever again.
Right.
What happened in Georgia, replicate that in a state like Texas, for example. Which is definitely, if you mobilize voter registration and you take that same blueprint, yeah, it'll take more money because it's a bigger state. But if we say, you know what, that is a critical priority. I wouldn't even mind if Joe Biden focused a little bit more on Texas, just so that Texas like them, not like Democrats, just a little bit more. Because if that happens, it's over. It's game over. It's going over. We don't even have this whole back and forth. They might even say, you know what, we'd love to have the electoral college abolished because then it wouldn't be working for them. Right now, it's working for them.
Nobody expected this to come out of Georgia. It was expected to come out of Texas. It was truly expected to come out of Texas. It was predicted to come out of Texas. And it was going to come.
Why was it predicted to come out of Texas? It
was predicted to come out of Texas because Barack Obama introduced something that was revolutionary, and that was called a path to citizenship.
Okay.
And my wife is from, and I can tell you this because my wife is from Houston.
Okay.
My two partners in our business, we own a contact tracing company. We do contact tracing for coronavirus. They're in Houston and Dallas, and they'll tell you this. The state of Texas is like the city of Houston, or let's say the city of Houston looks like the state of Texas.
Right.
Being that it is 30, 30, 30. 30% white, 30% black, and 30% Latino. That other 10%, Arab. If you
Arab?
ever been to Houston, Arab.
Oh,
If you ever
Arab.
been to Houston, it's because the oil stuff is all
Mhm.
there. But that's been a state that's been able to be taken over for the longest
Longest
time.
time. I used to live there.
Right. But Latinos,
Mhm.
and my daughter, the Dominique, grew up in Houston.
Okay.
She'll tell you that in every Latino family, it is very common for Latinos not to vote.
Right.
And the reason why they don't vote is even though they are U.S. citizens, everybody has a cousin that either lives with them, lives somewhere in the city, lives around that is illegal.
And
And that if you are a Mexican family or Latino family, you are, no matter how you look at it, you are a garrison for bringing in family members. And
Yeah.
family members come through. So what they've always traditionally done is stayed away from the electoral process.
Don't draw
And
in.
they've had friends on their sides, like the Bush family, who hire them. All the big ranchers, they hire the Latinos because that's work that black people won't do and white people don't want to do. And a lot of the picking, the cotton, not cotton, but picking fruit and stuff, that's what the Latinos come over and do here in this state. But what Obama did was he said, you know what? You guys no longer have to hide because we have a path to citizenship. That's what the whole DACA thing was. Now you guys can become citizens by going through this paperwork. And what that did was it added new people to the electorate in Texas that were legal, but never voted. Go ahead.
So let me tell you why, and that is exactly what's going on, and I'm not here to dispute that fact. However, let me tell you why I personally think that there's a slight miscalculation or misprioritization in recent years by the Democratic Party vis-a-vis Texas. They have placed their hopes on the brown people, Latinos, the Latinx community to deliver Texas. I personally believe that is not the right approach. Now, I believe that's part of the approach, but I believe just like in Georgia, the black vote delivered Georgia, and just like in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania, the black vote delivered that area. I believe that turning out more black voters is the key almost everywhere, including the state of Texas, if you really want to deliver the state into the blue column. And the reason I say that is because what we are seeing, as you just indicated, is that is the one, we are the one group that there's no question where we're going to be falling when it comes to this party politics. The reality is you looking just Florida, you saw how they was playing around in Miami. The Latinx community was not saying I'm all in on Biden, and that's the case everywhere.
They're generally.
I don't think that's what we should get out of.
Where are the Native Americans in all of this? Where are the across the country? Native Latinos have been generally, for the most part, Republican. Now we're looking at all of these Native Americans and Alaska Americans. What are they? I have no idea. Does anybody know?
Let me help answer that. What we just experienced here over with Trump losing, and with the Democrats going blue in Georgia, I don't get out of it that it's just blacks. What I get out of it is that it is,
and that's not
blacks,
what I said.
Latino, Native American, Asian. That's what 2044 is all about. If you want to beat them outright, have all of them show up to the polls and they still lose, that's because we become one with a group of minorities. So you're right.
I don't understand what you just said. I don't understand what you just said.
I think Latinos need to come together with blacks. I think we all need to come together, the minorities of this country.
I agree. All I'm saying,
Black,
is
Latino, Asian. Go ahead.
I agree. All I'm saying, Mr. Scott, is that I believe, from what I've heard, not only from you, but from the Democratic Party in general, is that they believe that the path is almost exclusively through increasing Latinx communities turnout in that state.
No,
I'm just saying that's what has been said over and over and over and over.
Well, no, because we preface this with 2044. And 2044 has nothing to do with isolating the Black community and having the Black community come out and lead this whole thing.
That's not what he said.
But I'm just saying 2044 is all about all of the races coming together and being able to outnumber the electorate that white folks have, that the white Republicans have, or even white liberals.
That is all fine and dandy, but when we talk about 2044, you're talking about the country as a whole. And until we get to the point of the electoral college being abolished, all of this stuff has to come down to a state by state conversation.
How are you going to get that abolished, though? Who's going to abolish it? And what?
So I believe that the way that it gets abolished is when we take Texas. You have to understand that the political calculation for the Republicans becomes much different, because if we can take Texas, then the Republicans will beg to have the electoral college abolished. Understand? Right now,
Texas will be next. Trust me, Texas is coming. Texas is coming.
Okay.
It's here now.
Okay.
The numbers are there. We physically see the numbers in Texas.
Good luck with
the problem with Texas is Latinos didn't vote because they were worried about getting their people sent back over and them getting in trouble and them losing their businesses and them losing their financials. They'd rather make money here and send it back to Mexico.
Mr.
But
Scott,
Obama changed that narrative.
We've just been joined by Irvin Reed, political consultant from gorgeous, well, he's actually from Cherry Hill here in the city of Baltimore, but he resides in gorgeous Prince George's County. Mr. Reed, are you safe in your area? Has your area also been taken over by the Proud Boys?
Woo!
Donnie, I am safe. I've been social distancing for years, so no, I don't go out. So I've just been following from a while, from a distance. But no, I'm good here in Prince George's. Yeah. Matter of fact, I was on the Metro earlier, and it was a kind of interesting feeling with all of the Proud Boys and whoever. This is like early in the morning. I had to do some things. But I didn't think something like this would happen.
Did you have any idea of what?
No, I'm shocked. I figured they'd come down, protest. It's hard to get near the Capitol, to get into the Capitol. I mean, so when I saw that they were inside the Capitol, I couldn't believe it, because the Capitol is, I mean, I'm down there all the time. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I just heard on the news, some of the law enforcement agencies, the 3 letters, were saying that the mayor of DC told them not to send folk down, and that they got it under control. And so I don't know how true that is, but that was just what was reported. Because you would think, what's that?
I said I hope that's not true. That U.S. Capitol was Swiss cheese today. It was like the Washington football team defense.
It was deep. And all of those cops weren't doing anything. They're just standing there, like holding it's like a football game where hold the line, just hold the line.
Mr. Reed, if they were Black people storming the Capitol, would there be a different reaction?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Oh, no question, absolutely. It would have been, there'd be a lot more people shot than just the one lady thus far that we know of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
would
but no,
Would it have been unmasked, or would they have come in with a larger group of people, or what kind of arsenal would have been there had it been Black people doing that, knocking down windows and climbing through the windows of the Capitol?
It would have been the new weapons. It would have been the new weapons that they hadn't revealed yet.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It would have been just like. What's that?
We're being joined by Sergeant Morocco Coleman, who's in Atlanta, and also Robert Scott from Atlanta, and Marcia Jews, who's here in Baltimore, and then Mayor Colin Byrd. He's, of course, from the area where
Mayor. Oh, absolutely. I'm so impressed with the young man. I'm watching him on Facebook. he talking my language. I'm like, wow, this brother got some balls. Oh yeah.
I thought, Mr. Irvin Reed, that you thought the world of Thomas V. Mike Miller and Steny Hoyer. Morocco and Robert, this young man is taking on a 39-year congressman, and we are so proud of him. But Mr. Reed, your name has come up in many of our conversations when it comes to politics in that area. So is it true that Thomas V. Mike Miller and Steny Hoyer are very near and dear to your heart?
Well, let me say this about Mike Miller. I see it differently than everybody. My first race in Prince George's County was against the ticket, and we lost. And that's where I met Wayne Curry, because he was running another campaign. But then I understood what the ticket was. But I wouldn't be as good as I am today had it not been for Mike. Mike was that guy that, you know, every time Mike is there, I got to strap it up. So he's made me a much better person. And it's almost like, you know, Magic and Bird. You need an enemy that's, yeah. So from my perspective, with me, it's always been about politics. He's 50 times. But hey, you know, he is who he is. And I don't blame Mike. I blame us. We let him do what he did.
Yep.
Well,
at some point we got to take responsibility. Yeah.
Well, let me just say this. I agree that we do share some responsibility for allowing him to do what he was doing for some time. But I also will say that an individual of that power, you cannot underestimate the influence that has on people's unwillingness to step to that man. And so I'll say this. You mentioned Magic and Bird, and you analogized it to some of your battles with Senator Miller over the years as he deployed his campaign slates either for or against various candidates that you may or may not have been on the side of. And I'll just say this. The difference in my mind, Mr. Reed, respectfully, is that with Magic and Bird, all it was entertainment and basketball. But when this guy won, we lost. Not just the Celtics lost or the Lakers lost. We lost as a county. We lost as a people because African Americans, the labor community, the civil rights community, the immigrant advocacy community over and over lost because of the things that this man did both in Annapolis and in the county. So I'm not trying to get you to comment a whole lot on if you don't want to go down that road, but I'm going to say, like, this was not a game that involved jump shots either going through the net or jump shots bouncing off the backboard brick. This was he's missing. In fact, I don't think that Senator Miller, when he did bad things, it was a result of him missing. He was hitting his mark, and his mark was to assault all of the legislative priorities of these various communities that have been impacted over the years, on top of not only in substantive ways, but on top of his symbolic misdeeds in the sense of most notable standing. So when I say symbolic misdeeds, so he had substantive misdeeds on public policy, but the symbolic misdeed was his passionate, unyielding, unconditional support of Roger Brooke-Taney, the author of the infamous Dred Scott decision and his pro-slavery views, which were not just confined to that decision, but that bared out in a pattern that we saw over the course of his judicial decisions, as well as his legal career and his life. And so this man defending that, and this man at the same time having all manner of negative things to say about Charm City, your hometown, Baltimore City, calling it a ghetto piece of S-word, he was a scourge to propriety and a menace to society. And if we don't address his legacy now, as you said, it is our responsibility. You're right. But if we don't address his legacy now, not only will his name continue to be plastered in prominence on these buildings, but his legacy and all of the policies that are represented by his legacy will continue to rule the day in Annapolis and in Washington when it comes to the Congress people that represent this district specifically. And so that's why we have to address it, because it has a symbolic impact. It has an emotional, psychological impact, but also a public policy consequence as well. That is massive.
Marcia Jews, have you accomplished your goal with this broadcast that you ordered?
And then some.
Mayor.
Yeah.
Am I correct that you were also involved with the 6 AAA women of the World War II? On my board of the Congressional Black Caucus, last year, we honored those esteemed ladies, and I just saw some information on there where you were very much involved with ensuring that they are receiving the Congressional Gold Medal. So I want to thank you for your involvement and for your efforts.
Oh, thank you. Absolutely. It's a tremendous group of Black women who deserve to be respected, but they're not only Black women who deserve to be respected and honored, they're also veterans who deserve to be respected, irrespective of their racial background and their gender background. So these are tremendous folks that on many fronts are worthy of that type of recognition. But unfortunately, you have some members of Congress who don't see fit this time to recognize them in that way. It's very unfortunate, but I'm happy to continue.
Attorney DeShield, in your absence, we kind of summarized it all, where this is such an historic day. Consider what happened in Georgia, and then also what's happening right now at the coup d'etat at the U.S. Capitol. It's been an eventful 24 hours or 48 hours.
What is that trial?
Okay, I thought that was just my headphones. I was like, what's going on?
Mayor Byrd.
Yes, sir.
When you start running for Congress, let Donnie know, man. I'd like to produce some commercials with you.
Oh, that's a beautiful thing. I appreciate you saying.
we have a independent TV studio here in Atlanta, and
and I'd like to see what we can bring from Georgia up there to help you too.
I like to start trouble. I like to start trouble, and you sound like a troublemaker.
Right.
Oh, but it's good trouble. Remember, it's good trouble versus good old boys politics.
Good trouble.
That's what this is all about.
I love it. I love revealing stuff. And see, we can do this out of Atlanta, and we do the editing and all that, and I send it to you over the internet. Nobody never know where it's coming from. You're doing your stuff up there.
Just so our show is being hacked by the Russians as we speak.
That's all right.
Bring it on.
Hey, that's how you know you're doing something.
Ask Trump. That's how you know you're doing something.
Irvin Lee, I know you have other things to do.
I'm gonna change this up.
Man, I want to hear Mr.
Stonecrest.
I didn't want
the city of Stonecrest. I used to be in Lithonia, but we just become Stonecrest.
Gotcha.
Or some of us have become Stonecrest.
All right, good.
Yeah, so our studio is actually in right near Lithonia High School.
Okay, gotcha.
Not far from Lithonia High School.
Good to go.
All right. This has been great. Thank you all.
Good deal. Thank you all for joining us.
Yes, I was trying on the ledge.
Oh, excuse me. When I stepped away, I got a call that Ossoff just got confirmed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it is confirmed, both of them now.
Done.
Robert DeShield. Is that Esquire DeShield?
We're running it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey,
Okay.
Mr. DeShield, I like that background. Look like you about to get to the good trouble.
Very Donnie.
We can't hear you, Robert.
He's muted.
So Mayor Byrd, you running for Congress?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We in it, and we in it to win it. And we're gonna win it.
Open up
Trial
microphone.
How can people support
Mr. DeShield, is his microphone open?
No, DeShield, he needs to open his microphone.
So we're gonna have
right down there to the left.
We're gonna have the act blue up in the next couple of days if folks want to donate online. But the way folks can support for now is going to be to go to www.facebook.com/vote_Bird. Again, that's www.facebook.com/vote_Bird. You can follow me on Twitter at Mayor Bird. If you want to get involved with the campaign and you're more old-fashioned like me with the communication, you can email me directly at colonabird@gmail.com. Again, that's colonabird@gmail.com. You know, that's another thing that I really want to try to bring to this job. You know, Congress, members of Congress, especially folks like Majority Leader Steny Hoyer, are extraordinarily inaccessible.
Trial.
They're extraordinarily inaccessible to the people that never in the community. In many cases, especially Steny Hoyer, they don't really come to community.
Trial.
Really deal with community issues, local issues. They want to nationalize everything when we have problems right here at home that they could be addressing. And the reason I mention that is because I've always been the type of person that believes that elected officials should actually be accessible. I'm giving out my email, I'll give out my phone number, and I'll still do that in Congress. Now, maybe people would advise against that. But if I serve you, how dare I say you can't talk to me? What? That don't make sense to me.
I feel that way about a pastor if I can't have your cell phone number. If you're too big to give me your number, I don't need you in my life.
Yeah, how do you serve somebody and then say you can't call me, you can't? Nah, that doesn't make any sense to me. Now I know it's tough, so I can't take every call all day long. But the reality
Mayor Barry answered his phone up until the end. He answered my calls until the end. We get a cat who been in office 5 minutes, and all of a sudden they don't answer their phone no more.
Yeah, I mean, and that's another thing. I believe very, very candid. I believe very strongly, and this is with my character, less than politics, right? Because that's the other thing. Politics isn't everything, right? Once politics becomes everything, then you will allow it to supersede every other thing, right? Let me say that again. Once politics becomes everything to you, then you will allow it to supersede every other thing, even things that are more important in the grand scheme of things. Okay, and so for me, I've always tried to put it in perspective. And so you mentioned, what did you just say? You said something that I wanted to.
We got to wrap this up.
All right, let's wrap it.
Because we are being whatever you call it,
hacked.
Yeah, attacked, and we want to sum it up. But your final.
My final statement is, it is very important so politics can't supersede everything. For me, I just personally believe that if you put the people first and you put God above all and you put values and principles above those things, then you'll be in the right place. But I think we have too many people right now who got it all out of balance and all out of order, and because they do, it hurts the people. It hurts the people. Inside and out.
Morocco Coleman, your final thoughts.
My final thoughts is that, again, I thank the people of the state of Georgia. And I thank you, Donnie, for the shows that you produced with Tiger and myself and Reverend Johnson, which has greatly aided us. And I'm impressed with the young mayor here, and as I said, I'll be looking to see if there's anything down on the Georgia scene here that we can transfer into his area if he decides to step to this higher calling.
Oh yeah, it's a done deal.
And it was great also meeting each and every one of you other individuals on the show today.
Good. Thank you for joining in on us. I know it was rather extemporaneous, but we were still glad to have, especially with the young Mayor Bird on the line.
Right.
Yeah, Mr. Reed, it's a pleasure and an honor.
Any thoughts, Mr. Reed? Okay. Mr. Scott?
No, I just had a nice time. Great meeting Mr. Bird, Mr. Coleman, everybody, the Shields and all. I have to make a big apology.
I ran my first campaign in Baltimore.
What is that?
In 1986.
Is there somebody on?
He's lagging big time. That's what's happening. He's lagging.
Mr. DeShield, any final thoughts? He's blocked out. Okay, Marsha, it's been a wonderful show. We're on every Monday through Friday from 10 to 11 a.m. East Coast time, right here on Facebook and YouTube Live. Marsha Jews, EEKIM, you want to put a plug in for yourself, and thank you for ordering this breaking news.
Yes, and thank you all for joining us at the last minute, but I was about to jump off the moon. Because I was
Going crazy, Morocco.
I was screaming loud. I'm sure my neighbors were like, what? I was like, wait a minute, this is nuts. So thank you, Donnie, for indulging me as often as you do. Thank you all for coming, and your input was really important. And always bring in all the good information. And Robert Scott, you always got something real good to say. So I'm loving it, brother. I'm loving you. And Morocco, if you a friend of Tiger, you mine. You're right, okay? Because you always got it. You brought it the last time, and you keep bringing it. So thank you, brother. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mayor Bird, brother, I'm loving you, and I'm really proud of you. And I want you to just stay the course. Don't waver. Don't waver. Hold your convictions and make certain that the people that you put around you are about you. And whenever they show you, when they do something crazy or whack, when they do something like that, believe them. And know that if that's what they do on the short term on insignificant things, they're going to do something far worse later on. Pay attention to who's in your inner circle, your middle circle, and exterior. Because sometimes the people out on the exterior really need to be on the inside, because sometimes the people on the inside aren't really about you and who you are. So thank you, Donnie. You're always going to be my baby brother. And I appreciate you, and I appreciate you indulging me, because I know he was ready to hang up the phone with me screaming 20 octaves in his ear. But we made it happen, and we appreciate you all being able to spin on a dime. So thank you very much. And we're going to just, God bless America, and God bless our community. We've got to just stay vigilant. We've got to work hard. Know that you have a support system here, and you have a voice here, and we're here to support everything that you all do. So thank you.
Thank you for joining us here on BeMoreNews.com, the news before the news, where we uncover the truth. Do stay safe, wear your mask, wash your hands, and stay away from nasty people.
Right.
Reporting.
Thank you. Good evening.